Today we're going to be looking at the Proteus 2x anamorphic zooms from LAOWA. Set of Super 35 anamorphic cine zooms, both T2.9, available in a 26 to 45 and a 45 to 85. I think overall what LAOWA has been able to cram into these lenses is super interesting. As always, anamorphic lenses are incredibly subjective, so my aim today is not to convince you to buy these, but I am going to feature a ton of sample footage shot across different cameras. So we're going to have stuff shot on the PYXIS, the KOMODO, and the new LUMIX S1R Mark II. So hopefully you can look at this footage and make a decision for yourselves what you think about these lenses. LAOWA isn't reviewing this video, they haven't sponsored this video, and I've only had these lenses for a couple of weeks to try them. Last year, LAOWA released the Nanomorph 1.5x anamorphic zooms. We featured them on the channel. You can go back and watch that video if you're interested. And overall, my opinion of those lenses was kind of mixed. It was incredibly impressive what LAOWA had done in terms of offering budget or affordable anamorphic zooms, but there was a bit of a trade-off. So for me, I'm someone who loves sort of anamorphic characteristics. I think the reason you shoot on anamorphic is to get those characteristics. And in my opinion, those lenses just didn't have the most personality. So there was a trade-off, there was a compromise, as always. What you were gaining in flexibility and efficiency in using, two anamorphic lenses to get your whole focal range, you were maybe trading off some of that, anamorphic look. And the story is sort of the same here, but because these are 2x lenses, you are getting now that more exaggerated anamorphic look. And I would say overall, they do come across and look anamorphic, but for 2x, they're not the strongest looking lenses. Some people are going to like that, some people are going to want more. So these are zoom lenses, so obviously you're getting a whole focal range from 26 to 85 in the form factor of just two lenses. Like the 1.5x Nanomorph zooms, these lenses are also parfocal, and I found that they performed well straight out of the box. They didn't need shimming and were parfocal across all cameras that I tested. So they're not the wildest 2x lenses I've ever used. LAOWA does tend to favour the kind of cleaner anamorphic look. Again, throughout this whole video, it's going to be subjective of whether you like that or not. Me personally, I do prefer a bit more grunge and a bit more character in anamorphic lenses. But again, if you are using these day in, day out and you want a more versatile lens set that you can use on a broader range of projects, then maybe the funkier, crazier lenses, especially lenses like the Remus, are not going to be suitable for a lot of higher end paid work. I haven't shot on the original Proteus lenses, so I can't really give you a sort of proper side-by-side comparison. I have shot on a lot of other 2x lenses, so I've obviously shot on the Pavos, which for me are kind of my perfect, affordable cine lenses. I've shot on the Orions. Those are probably the most beautiful lenses, anamorphic lenses I've used, but they're crazy big and really difficult to sort of shoot on a day-to-day, small crew kind of environment. Considering the original Proteus lenses are big, chunky, huge lenses, almost to the level of the Orions, I was really surprised when I got these lenses to see that they were very comparable to the previous Nanomorph zooms. So although they are quite long, they're zoom lenses, and they do have a bit of heft to them, they're certainly manageable for small crews and even for solo shooters. Using these on my various cameras, they definitely make your camera more front heavy. Mine came in PL, but they are available in EF, I believe, and also interchangeable mirrorless mounts. Flaring wise, they're available in both blue and silver flares, where obviously the silver flare takes on the light characteristic of the light source. I had them in blue. They're not the most beautiful flares that I've seen on anamorphic lenses, but they seem maybe a bit nicer than the previous Nanomorph lenses. I also found inconsistencies between the wider lens and the tighter lens. I found that the wider lens did want to flare a little bit more. But again, even across a prime set of anamorphic lenses, you're going to see differences in the behavior and quality of the flaring. So, that is to be expected whether you're using zooms or prime lenses. So wide open, these lenses are pretty soft and fuzzy with some chromatic aberration, but when you stop down to T4, especially on the wider lens, it does begin to bite a lot more, especially as you get down to 5.6 and beyond. And similar story, we zoom in, still pretty soft and fuzzy at wide open, perfectly usable, but if you want to focus on eyes and stuff, you're going to have a much easier time at T4 and beyond. At T5.6, things are very clean and tidy. In terms of flaring, it's not the most aggressive flare, and it does tend to lose a bit of contrast if you beam your light source straight down a lens, and then the flare characteristic does stay pretty stable as you zoom in and out, which is nice. The nanomorphs, I seem to remember it changed quite a bit. In terms of focus briefing, there is a little bit here present, as you might expect from an anamorphic lens, but on this wider lens it's not too bad at all. So onto the 45 to 85, wide open at 45. Again, same story, pretty soft, wide open, difficult to find focus on eyes. But on this lens, even at T4, we're not really seeing a massive improvement. And I would say T5.6 is probably where you want to think about shooting on this lens. And then at the longer end, at 85, again, we can see these differences. At T4, we can especially see that it doesn't really begin to improve until 5.6. So again, if you're shooting on this, I would think about stopping down to at least T5.6 to get the best performance. Again, flaring, it seems a little bit more subtle on this lens, and there's a secondary reflection you can see here that we didn't really see on the previous lens. When stopping down, that flare kind of disappears. Focus breathing seems to be a bit more pronounced on this lens, as you might expect from a longer zoom. And then here's just the differences in color matching between the two lenses. I found that the wider lens definitely pushes a bit warmer, and the tighter, is a little bit colder, which is interesting. These lenses also have fantastic close focus. The 26 to 45 lens has a really good close focus, and it has the best of the set. And then the tighter zoom, the 45 to 85, it's not as great, but it's still, within a usable range, considering that it is a much tighter focal length. Of course, you can also use diopters on these, but I don't think you'd find that you'd need to do that with the 26 to 45. I was quite surprised by how close you could get with this lens. In terms of distortion, unfortunately we are seeing pincushion distortion here. It's most apparent on the widest end of the wider zoom, and you can see it is maintained as you zoom through. It's a little bit more subtle on the 45 to 85, but it's still there, and you can definitely see it again as we zoom in. When we were out on the beach, we didn't really notice it, but of course I think if we were filming in a more urban environment with straight lines, I think it would be more apparent. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the full frame coverage. Here we've got the wider zoom lens, the 26 to 85. And as we zoom in, there is some coverage at the end of the spectrum. But of course, if we are cropping to a 2.39 to 1 aspect ratio, you will get some usable real estate on that lens on a full frame sensor. Again, similar story for the tighter zoom, although there is a slightly larger area of coverage, especially once you crop into that 2.39 to 1 aspect ratio. And of course, it will also depend on your tolerance to vignetting. I think these lenses are just over the threshold of giving you a nice anamorphic look. So these aren't the most magical anamorphic lenses, but I think that's okay. I think a lot of people are going to be willing to make that trade-off in order to get just two lenses that they can use on their professional project and that they're going to get on with and, get the job done. The fact that they don't have the strongest look could be a plus or a negative in different people's books. If you want to rent them out a lot and use them on professional works, and sometimes it can be a struggle to convince clients to shoot anamorphic because of the strong baked-in look, then using something that isn't super strong could be an easy sell for a lot more clients and allow you to bring them out on more jobs, thus making you more money and earning back your investment quicker. Over the last year, I have found myself increasingly moving away from using my DZO Vespid primes to favour the Super 35 LAOWA Ranger lenses. And I'm finding more often than not that the time and efficiency and cost saving of just bringing 3 tiny zoom lenses onto certain projects is much better than lugging a full case of primes and regularly having to swap them out and cart them around on location on professional jobs. As a working filmmaker, you know, specs and image quality are only one side of the story. How easy is it to use? How easy is it to transport? How much will it slow you down? How much time will it burn on set in terms of swapping out primes? These are all really important considerations as well with equipment, and it's something that is easily lost in a sort of like tech and spec obsession of YouTube and gear reviews. But if they're going to save you hours on set and allow you to earn money and make that money back quickly and allow you to achieve, you know, acquire more shots on your shot list than you could with primes, then that's something that's also quite important to consider as well. You know, looking at what's on the market at the moment, you've got the 1.8 Greatjoy lenses, you've got the Super 35 2x Pavos, and obviously the original Proteus. I'm going to rule the original Proteus out because they're huge lenses and they're not super expensive, but for me they're just too big to sort of want to own or use on a regular basis. Orions as well are in that. I think they're some of the best looking affordable anamorphics, but you know, they're in a completely different price category. So that leaves me like the Pavos, which are Super 35, and obviously the 1.8 times Greatjoy lenses, which are full frame. I think the 1.8 times Greatjoy lenses are some of my favorite budget anamorphics, but again, they come with their own drawbacks. The 50 is a non-constant squeeze. They're not the most consistent across the set in terms of look. And obviously there's only just 3 focal lengths, and it doesn't look like they're going to add to those. They also don't have the best close focus either, and they don't also have the strongest anamorphic look, especially when you shoot on Super 35. The Pavos are some of my favorite to date Super 35 2x lenses, but they're also more expensive than these zoom lenses. And I think you'd also have a more sort of efficient and sort of slick experience shooting on these 2x zooms than you would the Pavos. And then of course we have the LUMIX. Of course they are 1.5x lenses, not 2x, but they do have a very strong look for their squeeze factor. They have a lot more distortion, they're a lot more grungy and push much more of that sort of vintage vibe that I think a lot of people are looking for at this end of the market. The Proteus lack that romantic barrel distortion that everyone seems to love. We see it on the LUMIX, we see it on the Ryans, and we see it on the Pavos, but instead, like most of LAOWA's previous anamorphic lenses, we're stuck with pincushion here. And I like the LUMIX, they're nice lenses for the price, but they do sometimes look a little bit grungy, have limited focal lengths, they have pretty bad to average close focus, and me personally, I'm not a fan of the flares on those lenses. And I don't know how often I would really want to use them on a professional project unless I was really wanting to push a sort of grungier look. The Proteus, although they are a bit sharper and cleaner, they are a little bit more consistent. They are going to give you a better user experience when you're out filming, and are probably lenses that just aren't going to get in the way and allow you to get the shots that you need to get. Let me know what you think of these lenses in the comments down below. I'd also be interested in like which camera do you think they look the best on, the KOMODO, the PYXIS, or the S1R Mark II. Be interested to know your thoughts on that. As always, if you're not, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. But yeah, that's it. My name's Ed, and until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.